Hi and welcome to Slick Willy Fly. And today what we're going to do is another redfish fly. So this here is a perfect example of a Slick Willy Fly. And what I mean by that is I use few materials, quality materials that are going to get a lot of bites and won't break the bank. So for the tail I have Fin Racoon. So Fin Racoon is a product that I've been using now for, I don't know, a couple of years. I love this stuff. You can absolutely substitute Fin Racoon with craft fur, marabou, a million other things. What I like about this Fin Racoon is that it really doesn't foul. I mean, this is a great material. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find, but if you can find it, you should try it. I love it. And I'm using this light olive. We're going to go with a little bit of polar chenille, and that's all the flash I'm going to use on this fly. We are going to use a little bit of olive silly legs. They are barred olive silly legs right there. A couple of silly legs. And for the body, I'm going to use this little light olive. This might be called grass olive. This is called grass olive. And this is the shrimp brush. So that's all the materials in this fly, keeping with Slick Willy, mentality. I think you guys, if you're watching my videos, you know that I'm trying to make flies that are the most important. They have to get bites. That's the most important. But I'm also trying to tie flies that don't take a super long time to tie, that are not super complicated to tie, and we're not using materials that are going to break the bank. So that's the whole point of Slick Willy. It's how I approach fishing, and I know that if I'm buying super expensive materials, and I know that if a fly takes me an insane amount of effort and time to tie, I'm not gonna cast it up under a mangrove. So I don't want to tie that fly. I don't want to tie anything that I won't cast up under a mangrove. So this fly will swim hook side up. It's gonna look just like this. And I say we change the camera angle. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And let's tie a fly. Okay, so let's tie a fly. For the hook, I'm going to use a Mustad 34007. And for thread, I'm going to use Olive Vivus 60. I'm going to put a tiny drop of super glue on the hook, just to help that thread stay locked tight. I find that when I don't put super glue on the hook, that after a few fish, sometimes the materials start wanting to spin, and I just hate when that happens. So it's a lot better if I put a little super glue on. So for this fly, I haven't really pre-prepped anything. There really isn't too much to pre-prep. We're going to start, the first material we're going to put on after I get this nice little olive thread bed down. It's going to be the dumbbell eyes. For dumbbell eyes, I'm using brass dumbbell eyes. They're nickel with the yellow and a black pupil. I really love the way these look. And these are actually 5mm, which I would say is probably medium in the States. So my placement is going to be far enough back so that I can tie this off and put in a weed guard. And like all my other videos, I don't really count wraps here. Just put it on there, making sure that I like where it's positioned, making sure that it's straight. You could put a little super glue. I'm going to use a little bit of UV resin, but probably not on the dumbbell eye. You could put a little super glue on your thread and come in here and give this a couple more wraps in each direction, just to make sure that that works down in there. But the most important wraps are these figure eights, where I go over the hook shank and under the dumbbell eyes, and what I'm doing is I'm drawing tight all those previous wraps. Just cinches everything nice and tight. Okay, so the first important tip for this fly, you see I've taken the thread into the bend. So my clump of material that I'm going to use for the tail is actually going to start in the bend. And the reason for that, I'm going to show you right now. Here is the previous fly. So when this fly is sinking down to the grass or to the bottom, to the sand, the tail is actually, it's not really a 45-degree angle, maybe it's like a 20 or 25-degree angle, but it's going to come up, which is just going to give this a little bit more life. So that's the whole point of putting the tail in. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my fin raccoon here, and I'm going to take a clump. You know, how big is it? That's all up to you. How big do you want your tail? But I would say that right there is enough. I don't need a massive clump. Well, I don't know what we call this. You know, you hear people talk about clumps in the form of a pencil. I don't know. This may be half the thickness of a pencil. It's so difficult to say exactly what it is, but I will say this about fin raccoon. So fin raccoon is not like craft fur where I take out all the shorts. In fin raccoon I use the whole clump. So what I am going to measure out here is the length. I'm going to wet it so that I have a good idea what my length is going to be. And what do I want the tail to be? Maybe 2 hook shanks. There's 1. There's 2. My fingers are right at 2 hook shanks now. That's plenty. I don't want it super duper long. Just going to trim this. And I'm actually going to put it in at the dumbbell eye. And then I'm going to wrap it back towards the bend of the hook. Couple of loose wraps, making sure that I like where it is, making sure the length isn't too bad. It's not. I like it. Now I can crank on this, and this will help me build a little body as well. But the most important thing is to take this down into the bend, just like that. Perfect. Love it. Okay, so the next material that I'm going to use is a little bit of polar chenille. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have some polar chenille and then the crazy legs and then continue with a little bit more polar chenille. So you just tie in that cord nice and hard. It's important that you bring the thread right to where you want the polar chenille to start. Get this out of the way. Now, like a lot of other chenilles and any kind of dubbing that I use, I try to draw everything to the back. You can easily use our rotary function here, and I'm gonna put in quite a few wraps here because I want, this is the only flash I'm going to use on this fly, and I do want it to have I want it to show. So that's, I don't know how many wraps. I kind of keep grabbing the point of the hook. Gotta be careful with that. I'm not sure, I wasn't counting, but I don't know, say that's 5 wraps there. I'm gonna bring my thread back, capture it there without trimming away anything. Just gonna pull my chenille back and put it in my material holder. And now I can get some silly legs. 2 silly legs is plenty. You've heard me say a bunch of times, I like trimming my silly legs off the packaging. had a few silly legs get ripped in my life. It's not that they're expensive, it's just what's the point? So now I'm going to go to the thread with my silly legs, about evenly divided on the thread here. It's pretty close. So I'm just going to put them on the hook. Couple of wraps. Now I get 2 on each side. Remembering that this fly swims hook side down, I'm going to go ahead and lock these in that orientation as best as I can. Just like that. Get my thread out of the way again, and now back to the polar chenille. I try to put my silly legs out of the way. Usually the first wrap after silly legs, maybe the first couple, I do old school. I don't use the rotary function. And after I get a few more wraps on here, we're going to say, okay, that's plenty of flash. Alright, we'll call that. You know, again, you saw I wasn't counting wraps. I just kind of make it look the way I want it to look. So now I'm trapping this chenille, and we can cut that tag off. Alright, so the last material is going to be this EP brush. So you just capture the wire core of that EP brush. This is a leftover piece, so I'm really hoping this is going to be enough. And again, I'm going to try and draw all the material to the back. Get it right to those dumbbell eyes. Remember, it's a wire core, so you want to use your wire cutter to cut off the tag end. And you need to push down that little wire tag and make sure that that's locked in nice and hard. Alright, so the last thing to do is to put in a weed guard. And I think, and I do, I have a little piece of Mason's hard mono left over from a previous fly. So all I'm going to do is take this little piece of hard mono, I'm going to put a crimp in it. Put this little flat spot in it and a little bend, which gives me an awesome little tie-in point. I get as much of this EP fiber out of the way as possible. And I just bring that weed guard right to the hook. That little flat spot that I make is a perfect little tie-in point, and we just secure that nice and hard onto that hook. Came out perfect. So now it's a whip finish. Give it a little second whip finish, even though I'm going to use UV resin. Yep, and I can trim away my thread. So now you have a choice. You can do your trim work first and then the UV resin, or you can do the UV resin and then the trim work. I'm going to do the trim work only because of the, I don't want anything to stick into the UV resin. The first thing I'm going to do is pick out any trapped fibers that might have trapped in this brush, and you can see there's a ton of them. Okay, now remember, this fly will swim hook side down. So I really don't want a lot of material on the bottom. In fact, the majority of this material on the bottom, I can just come in here straight off, right down the center, and trim a lot of this away. We don't want any of this material. What happens is this material will have a tendency to want to float a bit and will fight the fly. It won't allow the fly, or it'll try not to allow the fly to swim really well hook side up the way we want. Now the other thing I'm going to do with this particular fly is I'm going to take the sides and I'm just going to give them a little bit of an angled cut, kind of like the way you would cut a redfish toad, just to give it a little bit more of a little crustacean kind of look to it. And on the top, don't know how much I'm going to cut off the top, but I'll probably trim it a little. You have this weed guard in the way now, but that's okay. Just give it a little bit of an angle. I want to have this, I'm not cutting now, I'm just using the point of the scissor to dig out anything that might be trapped. But I want to have this little body, for lack of a better word, sticking up in the front. Can invert the fly, make life easier here. Man, I'm really happy the way that turned out. That turned out really well. I might do a little bit more fine trimming later, but that for now that's good enough. So the next thing is to the UV resin. Just trimming a couple of the wild hairs out of the way. We'll trim this. I can do that now. Actually, I'll do it after. I like to have it to hold it right where I want it. A little bit of UV resin on the knot. And my lamp. And like all my flies, this will sit in my windowsill for the rest of the weekend and let the sun do its job. Cure this thing up nice and hard. I could trim possibly the silly legs as well. We'll look at that here in a second. So I cure for, 20, 30, 40 seconds. I'm not commercial fly tying, so it doesn't matter. I can cure a little longer than the average person. So the weed guard, I use my wire cutter to cut the Mason's hard mono, and I want to cut it about with the point of the hook. I tend to cut a little bit long. I can always trim, I can't put it back. So I think that came out good. And for my rubber legs, I like to do them all at one time. You know what? I might not. It's borderline. They're a little bit longer than I like. So I'm just gonna take them all together. Gonna put this fly back in the vise. I'm gonna take these all together, and I don't really want them too long. So I'm not, remember, if you pull your rubber legs too tight, they end up too short. So you just want to pull them so that they're straight. And there they are. Okay, so we're back. So there it is. Pop this out so I can show it to you. This is an awesome fly. It's gonna swim just like this, hook side up. The fin Racoon is gonna really be great about not fouling. The weed guard's gonna do its job. I might trim a little bit more. In the end, I want the fly to look very similar to this. You can see the identical lengths. Both these flies are gonna work great. I'm gonna just do some fine trimming. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Look forward to getting some feedback and hearing how people do with these flies. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck catching, and see you on the next video.